This world has become so loud that we can no longer hear ourselves. Every corner is filled with voices fighting for attention, each trying to be heard, as if speaking louder makes one right. A storm of noise rises endlessly, from ads, politics, news, and viral content, all shouting the same message, "Look at me." And within that noise, something has died. Not knowledge, but wisdom. It is ironic. Humanity has never had more access to information than now. The knowledge of the entire world fits inside the phone we hold. Yet, we have never felt so lost. There is too much to know and too little to understand. We live in the age of data, but we are dying in the poverty of thought. And the scariest part is that no one seems to find it strange. Look around, and you will see people arguing, shouting, and sharing opinions, but rarely listening. They speak as if swimming in waves of their own voice, not realizing that it is blending into meaningless noise. Every day, millions of new pieces of content appear. Videos, podcasts, articles, most of them not created to help us understand, but to make us react. We do not read to learn, but to confirm what we already believe. We do not watch to change, but to feel right. Wisdom is never loud. It does not seek the spotlight, nor does it need applause. It lives in silence, in the moments when a person pauses, looks up from the screen, and asks, "Is what I believe really true?" But society today leaves no room for such pauses. We worship speed. Everything must be fast. Fast news, fast reactions, fast success. Even emotions must be compressed into simple icons, a heart, a thumb, a smile. There is no time left for complexity, for thought, for reflection. Here is an uncomfortable truth. Wisdom cannot survive in a shallow world. It needs space, silence, and time to mature. Yet time is exactly what the modern world steals from us. When you can no longer sit still for 10 minutes without checking your phone, you lose your ability to think deeply. When you read only headlines and believe you understand, you stop being a learner and become a consumer. And when everyone consumes the same, the only thing left to distinguish them is who shouts louder. Those who shout the loudest are now called influencers. They are paid to think for us, speak for us, and decide what we should care about. They do not need to be accurate, only interesting. They do not need understanding, only attention. And we, knowingly or not, feed this system with every like we press. Each small tap, each careless share, lays another brick in the temple of shallowness. Once, humanity honored wisdom as the torch that led the way. In ancient Greece, those who dared to question were considered noble. In the East, people believed that the wise are those who remain silent before what they do not understand. In those times, slowness was not a flaw. It was a form of respect. Respect for truth, for life, for oneself. But today, we fear slowness. If something does not bring instant results, we call it useless. If an answer does not appear within the first few lines, we scroll to find an easier one. When speed becomes a virtue, wisdom becomes a burden. It makes us feel slow, outdated, too deep. In a world that worships simplicity, depth is seen as weakness. Those who pause to think are left behind. And so, little by little, wisdom fades from life like a photograph dissolving under the neon lights of our time. Some might say, it has always been like this. There have always been shallow people and thoughtful ones. But never before has shallowness been so rewarded. A shocking sentence can make someone famous overnight. A controversial act can bring fame, money, and opportunity. Meanwhile, the patient, the careful, the reflective are seen as boring. The world no longer demands that we be right, only that we be noticed. And in this hunger for attention, wisdom dies, not by murder, but by neglect. Have you noticed? It is now rare to hear someone say, "I don't know. I need to learn more." That phrase, once a symbol of intelligence, is now seen as weakness. We have learned to appear certain about everything: politics, religion, philosophy, society. Even when we only skimmed a vague headline, we fear being seen as quiet, uncertain, or simply listening. But that fear itself is proof that wisdom has long left us. A truly intelligent society is not one filled with smart people, but one that respects the complexity of the world. Yet the modern world does the opposite. It simplifies everything into black or white, right or wrong, win or lose. It teaches us to react, not to understand. It rewards confidence, even when it is rooted in ignorance, and it turns those who still hesitate, those who still find life worth pondering, into outsiders. If there is one definition for this era, it may be the age of organized noise. Every platform, every app, every conversation urges us to speak more than to think, and we have grown so used to it that we no longer realize where we are being led. We believe we are free, but our freedom is pre-programmed within the limits of what is easy to digest. We are allowed to argue, as long as we play within someone else's rules. In such a world, wisdom cannot exist in the open. It hides in quiet corners, where few people look. It is not dead, it just no longer gets invited to the stage. It still breathes, in silent rooms, within those who have not let their minds be completely consumed. But its light is fading. And if we do not notice, one day, true silence will become only a memory, something humanity once knew, once feared, and once needed to understand itself. The question is no longer how to save wisdom, but whether we still remember what it looks like. Because in this world, everything is designed to make us forget. Forget the feeling of sitting alone. Forget the joy of understanding something difficult. Forget that truth is not always what we want to hear. And once we forget, wisdom does not need to die. It only needs to be replaced. Replaced by easy laughter, instant satisfaction, and the illusion that we are living wisely. But if you are still listening now, if you still feel something is wrong with the rhythm of this life, then perhaps wisdom has not disappeared completely. It is only waiting to see if you can be silent enough to hear it call your name. The truth is, the world has never needed wisdom more than it does now, yet it has never valued it so little. Everywhere, people celebrate those who speak the loudest, those who dare to shock, those who can turn shallow ideas into catchy slogans. Fame no longer comes from depth, but from frequency. The more someone is mentioned, the more they are believed to be right. Meanwhile, the quiet and thoughtful are seen as outdated. Our society does not reward understanding, it rewards attraction. Just look at the role models the world now praises, and you will see it clearly. The so-called inspirational figures are no longer sages, but entertainers. Speeches stand out not for their meaning, but for their editing, their effects, their ability to go viral. Everything is simplified to be easily consumed, like fast food for the mind. People even learn to summarize wisdom into hollow quotes repeated so often that they lose all meaning. Wisdom, once born from experience and reflection, is now replaced by shareable information. We no longer need to understand, only to know. We no longer need to live, only to show that we know. And so, our conversations have become shallower than ever. People speak to be heard, not to listen. They argue to win, not to understand. Each time we play a video or read a comment, we see it again, voices colliding without ever truly touching one another. The irony is that we still believe we are becoming smarter. We know more than ever about science, technology, politics, art, yet this overflow of information makes us forget one simple truth. Knowing more is not the same as understanding deeply. We can read hundreds of articles, but never truly think about anything. We can memorize the words of great minds, yet fail to live by their spirit. For wisdom is not stored in memory, but in the ability to live truthfully with what we know. Long ago, people honored those who asked questions. They understood that only by daring to doubt could we move closer to truth. But now, society fears uncertainty. People want everything clear, simple, and fast. They want to be right immediately, even if that rightness is only an illusion. Every opinion is reduced to two sides, two camps, two extremes, and anyone standing in the middle is seen as weak, indecisive. Yet it was in that gray space where answers were unclear that wisdom once lived, and now that space is being abandoned. When people stop valuing complexity, they begin to fear it. They fear contradiction, fear what cannot be fully understood, fear the feeling of not knowing enough to conclude. We want to believe the world can be easily explained, that good and evil are clearly defined, that right and wrong are obvious, that choosing a side brings peace. But life does not work that way. It is vague, layered, and sometimes cruel in its silence. The wise understand this. The hurried try to escape it. Perhaps that is why the modern world feels so exhausting. We are not tired because we work too much, but because we must pretend to know everything. Every day, We are expected to have an opinion on everything: economics, religion, culture, war, technology. And if we have none, we are called indifferent. But not everyone can truly understand these things. So we learn to repeat the opinions of others, to echo the voice of the crowd. An invisible loop is created, where people compete to speak, yet all are only repeating what they have heard. Wisdom needs time. It cannot be mass-produced like digital content. It needs years of listening, observing, and experiencing. It comes slowly, like spring returning after winter. But the modern world has lost the patience to wait for such seasons. It wants results, and it wants them now. Even concepts like spirituality or healing are turned into products for consumption. Every deep idea is cut into a few emotional lines. What was once sacred becomes a trend, and the most sacred of all, the journey of understanding oneself, becomes a luxury. People no longer sit in silence to understand themselves. They play healing music to drown out their inner voice. They no longer read to reflect, but to, quote, they no longer write to see within, but to post online. We live in a time where every inner act is turned outward, where everything we do for ourselves is displayed for validation. And when the inner world is constantly exposed, it ceases to be inner. It becomes another product of the market. There was a time when the wise were seen as guides. Now they are seen as outcasts. Their silence is mistaken for arrogance, their humility for weakness. Society does not want those who understand, only those who make us feel good. The painful truth is, we do not truly want wisdom. We only want confirmation. We do not want people to be right. We want them to agree with us. And that is how wisdom is pushed into the shadows. It is not buried by force, but extinguished by indifference. No one kills it. They simply turn away, letting it die quietly. Sometimes it still flickers, in a line of a book, in a quiet conversation, in a stranger reading at a cafe. But most of the time, it is drowned by the noise of celebrated mediocrity. Try to remember the last time you witnessed a real conversation where two people did not try to win, but truly tried to understand each other. When was the last time you heard a public figure say, "I don't know, I'm still learning"? And when was the last time you read something that made you sit in silence, not because you agreed or disagreed, but because it made you think? Perhaps it has been a long time. Today's world is hungrier for wisdom than ever. Yet the more we hunger for it, the more we avoid it. Because wisdom is not easy to digest. It forces us to face contradictions, to admit what we do not want to see. It does not make us feel right. It makes us feel humble. And in a time when everyone wants to become the best version of themselves, humility has become the rarest thing of all. We have lost the ability to live in the silence of not knowing. We fear that emptiness. We fear looking into the darkness within. And in that fear, we lose wisdom itself, the very thing that once helped humanity tell the difference between noise and truth, between wisdom and the performance of wisdom. Now, the crowd's applause is louder than the whisper of the soul. Truth is drowned by entertaining content. And in this chaos, we call noise freedom, fame meaning, and shallowness progress. But there is one thing the world forgets. Wisdom does not need a crowd. It only needs one person brave enough to look deeply. And sometimes, just one person is enough to quiet an entire storm. No one sets out to kill wisdom. It dies slowly because people stop nurturing it, because we begin to see reflection as a burden and silence as a waste of time. We do not realize that behind the noise we consume every day, videos, news, social media, debates, there is an entire machine built to feed ignorance itself. Not a conspiracy, but a mechanism. A system that knows very well. Tired people are easier to control. Distracted people are easier to believe, and fearful people are easier to sell to. The algorithm of this world does not want you to understand. It only wants you to react, because reactions create data, and understanding does not. Every click, every burst of anger, laughter, or emotion becomes a unit of profit. People say we live in an attention economy, but in truth, it is an economy of distraction. A society where the fewer people think, the more people become assets. And so, ignorance is not only tolerated, it is programmed, encouraged, and rewarded. Look at how the media works. Headlines crafted to trigger emotion. News cut short to fit within 30 seconds. Information is no longer created to help us understand, but to keep us engaged. Outrage is the most effective tool. It makes us feel as if we are participating in the world, while in truth, we are trapped in a loop of reaction. Meanwhile, education exhausts itself chasing measurable results, forgetting to teach people how to think. Schools train us to answer, not to question. And those who dare to ask differently are often the ones most undervalued. We think we are free to choose, but our choices are skillfully framed within invisible boundaries. Every argument, no matter how heated, takes place inside a box someone else built. We are allowed to fight over everything, as long as we never touch the essence. It is the smartest way to make people believe they are waking up, when in fact, they are still asleep. If you pay attention, you will see. We are growing more afraid of slowness, of things that require thought. A 3-minute video feels long. A 300-page book makes us tired before we open it. Even real conversation face-to-face, voice-to-voice, with silence in between, is replaced by rushed messages. We are losing the ability to sit quietly with others and with ourselves. And when we lose that ability, we lose the foundation of wisdom itself, because wisdom cannot grow from haste. It needs solitude, slowness, and a quiet space where questions can breathe. Yet in this age, every quiet moment is filled with content. A few seconds of silence make us uneasy, so we reach for our phones. In that instant, we choose the easier path. We choose not to think. And when an entire generation chooses not to think, ignorance becomes normal. Sometimes it is even celebrated. Those who talk fast and loud are seen as confident. The quiet ones are labeled weak. Those who ask deep questions are told they are too complicated. Slowly, false simplicity becomes the measure of effectiveness, success, and realism. But that realism is a prison built from short words, lazy thoughts, and beautiful slogans. And inside that prison, people proudly call themselves free. In times like these, wisdom does not disappear, it relocates. It withdraws from the crowd and hides in corners, untouched by light. It lives in those who no longer compete in the noise, yet still observe with patience. In those who read slowly, or choose to stay silent until they understand. In those who lift their heads above the ocean of content and quietly ask, "Something feels wrong, doesn't it?" If you are still listening now, maybe you are one of them. Maybe deep down, you feel tired of meaningless arguments, repetitive news, and videos filled with sound but no soul. If you have ever wanted to turn everything off just to hear your own breath again, then perhaps wisdom is calling you back. Because it never truly disappeared, it has only been waiting for someone willing to listen. And if this speaks to you, say something. Leave a thought, a reflection, a small piece of yourself in this sea of noise. Not to prove anything, but to remind yourself that others like you still exist. Those who still believe silence has value. That thinking still matters. One honest comment, one shared thought, one sincere response, these may be the smallest ways to keep wisdom alive. Because wisdom, in the end, cannot live alone. It survives through dialogue, not through shouting. Imagine this. If everyone listening right now, instead of scrolling past, stopped for a moment and wrote down one true thought, not what they think they should say, but what they truly feel, would the world become quieter or deeper? Perhaps a little of both. What is frightening is not that ignorance is growing, but that the wise are staying silent. For when they fall quiet, the crowd assumes that noise is truth, and then careful voices vanish from the public conversation. The world becomes a place where the loudest are seen as the most right, but truth has never belonged to the loud. Truth comes only when we are brave enough to be still, to look longer, to listen deeper. The machine of this age will keep running. It will make us angry, make us laugh, make us buy, make us forget. But there is one power it can never take away, the power to choose what we focus on. And that is where wisdom begins. Not in books, not in philosophy, but in the moment you pause in the crowd and choose not to react. You simply watch, understand, and take one deep breath. Perhaps wisdom does not need to be reborn. Perhaps it only needs to be remembered. Remember that it was once here, that it once taught us to live slowly, to understand, to listen. Remember that the world cannot be saved. By shouting, it can only be healed through conscious silence. And maybe in the very moment you become still, the world might finally hear itself again. Wisdom has never disappeared. It has only turned inward, hiding within those who still know how to listen. Like a small flame flickering in a room full of wind, it has not gone out, only weakened because no one has the patience to keep it alive. People do not kill wisdom, they simply ignore it. They do not burn books, but they stop reading. They do not ban conversation, but they make every exchange so noisy that no one can truly speak to one another anymore. And slowly, silence, once the root of understanding, has become something unfamiliar. Today, we live in an economy where attention is the new currency. The more attention you draw, the more valuable you are. Apps are designed to measure every movement, every tap, every glance, every reaction. The world no longer asks what you think, but what you are watching, what you are buying, what you are angry about. Every piece of information we receive is carefully selected, not to expand understanding, but to maintain dependence. And while we think we are choosing, it is we who are being chosen. News is no longer made to inform, but to provoke the right kind of outrage. Reports are written not to enlighten, but to keep viewers from leaving. Articles are designed not to connect, but to stir emotion. When anger becomes an economic driver, calm becomes outdated. And in such a world, wisdom becomes a burden. It does not create engagement. It does not excite. It does not bring profit. So it is pushed aside, seen as a luxury for those who have too much time to think. But the real tragedy does not lie in the system. It lies within us. Because we are not merely lulled to sleep, we choose to sleep. We fear being left behind if we slow down, fear being unheard if we do not shout. We would rather be loud in the crowd than alone in awareness. And so, wisdom which grows only in silence is suffocated by our own hands. Think about this. How long has it been since you were truly alone? Without music? Without your phone? Without trying to fill the emptiness? In those moments, we start to feel restless, uneasy, and we rush to find something to escape it. Yet, it is in that very stillness that wisdom waits. It waits for us to be brave enough to look inward, into the space where noise cannot reach. Wisdom is not out there. It does not live in motivational videos or best-selling books. It lives in the simplest moments. When you look out the window in the morning and realize you have not truly noticed the light for a long time. When you listen to someone and truly hear them, without planning your reply. When you admit that something you once believed was wrong. In those moments, wisdom breathes softly, and if you listen closely, you can hear it coming alive again. The modern world has made slowness feel obsolete. Thinking deeply is seen as weakness, changing your mind as instability. But wisdom cannot survive in haste. It needs time, like a seed needs soil. It needs silence, like a flame needs air. Yet we constantly fill every space with information. The more we know, the more we think we understand. The less we truly understand, the more certain we feel. A cycle born of fear. Fear of not knowing. Fear of being left behind. Fear of facing ourselves. When we lose the ability to sit still, the world within us begins to fade. Everything grows so loud that there is no room left for the whisper of the soul. We no longer ask why, we only ask what's next. The first question nourishes wisdom. The second feeds addiction. And every time we choose next, we drift further from what is real within us. But not all is lost. There are still those who live differently, quietly. They do not chase trends. They do not crave attention. They do not need an audience. They exist like tiny sparks in the night, small, but enough to illuminate a corner of the dark. They are the ones still reading old books while the world scrolls endlessly. The ones who ask themselves hard questions, while others look for easy answers. The ones who choose to live slowly, not out of laziness, but out of honesty. And perhaps they are the ones keeping wisdom alive. Because wisdom, like fire, cannot live alone. It spreads from one person to another, from one quiet conversation to one awakened soul. As long as one person keeps it alive, there is hope. And if you are listening now, if something inside you stirs awake, then perhaps that flame is reaching you. Sometimes wisdom does not return with thunder, but with a quiet sigh when you realize, I've been living too fast. It comes in the moment you turn off the screen, not out of boredom, but because you sense the need for silence. In that moment, you have already stepped out of the crowd, not to separate yourself, but to see more clearly. And from there, the path back to wisdom begins to unfold, not a new path, but the one we once knew and simply forgot how to find again. The louder the world becomes, the emptier people feel. We think we are living in an age of connection, yet we have never felt so alone. That loneliness does not come from the absence of others, but from the loss of connection with ourselves. Every day, we are surrounded by thousands of sounds, hundreds of faces, dozens of streams of information. Yet within it all, our minds remain still like a lake that no longer reflects. We hear much, but we do not truly listen. We speak often, but we no longer communicate. And in that distance, wisdom quietly leaves. People believe silence is emptiness, but in truth, it is noise that drains meaning from life. When we lose the ability to sit still, we begin to fear the truths we have been avoiding. We fill that fear with music, movies, news, and endless small talk. We entertain ourselves to forget our fatigue, but the more we entertain, the more exhausted we become. Because pleasure cannot heal the absence of meaning. We only numb the soul with easy joy, while the deeper parts of us remain hungry. The modern world constantly sells us ways to forget that emptiness. Bursts of excitement, short-lived pleasure, momentary approval. We chase tiny hits of dopamine, a notification, a like, a compliment, a sensational headline. Each one makes us feel alive for a moment. But when the light fades and silence returns, the emptiness grows deeper, and we need another fix. So a culture of addiction is born, where people no longer seek meaning, only ways to forget. In this cycle, foolishness disguises itself as fun. It makes us laugh, relax, and forget. And when ignorance becomes comfortable, we begin to love it. It stops being shameful and becomes fashionable. Mindless content is called entertainment. Vulgarity is seen as authentic, and shallowness is praised as natural. And so superficiality becomes normal. When something wrong is accepted long enough, it becomes ordinary. And once it becomes ordinary, it becomes right. We laugh at nonsense and say, it's just for fun. But every laugh has a cost, because when we laugh at ignorance, we keep it alive for one more day. It spreads, not through hate, but through indifference. We do not protest. We do not reject. We just scroll past. But that quiet scrolling is its greatest victory. For wisdom does not die from attack, it dies from neglect. And one day we realize we no longer know what real emotion feels like. Everything has a filter. Every experience is designed to be shared. We no longer live to feel. We live to post. Joy must be photographed. Sadness must become a caption. And silence, once the deepest part of the human spirit, has become something no one can bear. A world that cannot be silent is a world that cannot understand. And a world that cannot understand is one where ignorance is worshipped as a new religion. When wisdom departs, we lose not only understanding, but also the ability to love. Because true love requires presence, and the distracted cannot be present. We talk while planning our replies. We meet while thinking about the photo we will share later. Every connection has conditions. Every feeling has a purpose. Love becomes a kind of emotional transaction, quick, neat, replaceable. But love without depth is only a reflection of loneliness, and the more we try to love to fill the void, the emptier we become. The more advanced the world grows, the more sophisticated loneliness becomes. It is no longer the loneliness of lack, but of abundance. We have everything except peace. We have knowledge, but not wisdom. Voices, but nothing worth saying. Joy, but no faith. A civilization bright with lights, yet underneath, human souls shrink, fading like candles in the wind. And then we begin to confuse motion with growth. We think we are evolving, but we are only spinning in circles. Everything changes except the person within. We know how to fly into space, but not how to sit still with ourselves. We speak of artificial intelligence, but lose the natural wisdom that once helped us see the difference between what matters and what does not. Yet within it all, a small hope remains. Sometimes all it takes is a single moment of awareness, 1 second of stillness, amid the noise, to awaken what has been asleep. Maybe it happens when you see a sunset and realize you have forgotten its simple beauty, or when you sit in a crowded room and suddenly feel unbearably alone. Those moments, though painful, are signs that wisdom is still alive, still whispering to you. Something deeper is waiting. The truth is, no one can live forever in pretense. Sooner or later, the soul will speak, not in words, but through the emptiness you feel, through the weariness that follows forced happiness, through the quiet question that arises, what am I really living for? That question is the first sign of wisdom returning. And when it appears, you have two choices: drown it out with more noise, or sit and listen to it completely. If you are brave enough to listen, you will realize that wisdom never left you. It has only been waiting for you to stop. You do not need to leave the world, quit social media, or turn away from people. You only need one true moment of stillness, one deep breath, without interruption, one honest admission that you do not know everything, but still want to learn, still want to live more deeply. And from that moment, wisdom begins to return, not loud, not grand, but softly, like a quiet breeze passing through a mind finally open again. Yet there is another path, quieter and more genuine, the path of awakening. It does not begin with a lecture or a book, but with a single moment when you realize you are too tired of the noise, tired of always having an opinion, of having to prove yourself, of constantly keeping up. When your mind begins to feel crowded with too many unnecessary things, that is when wisdom knocks. And if you listen, it will whisper softly, reclaim your attention. Everything begins there, with what and whom we give our focus to. Attention is life energy, the lamp that lights the way to awareness. If that lamp is constantly turned outward, we will soon forget where we are. So the first step is not to seek wisdom, but to learn to protect your attention. Guard your mind as you would a sacred temple. Do not let anything, a newsfeed, an algorithm, a sound enter without knocking. Everything you allow in becomes a part of your soul. The second step, learn to question what is celebrated. Not everything that is praised holds real value. Fame does not equal truth, and popularity does not equal wisdom. This world glorifies what is bright, fast, and easy to understand, but wisdom hides in what is dim, slow, and hard to grasp. Sometimes the most valuable things are those that leave you confused. If you come across an idea that makes you fall silent, do not rush away. That silence may be the very place where wisdom is being born. Then comes the third step. Learn to listen to silence itself. Wisdom does not shout. It does not demand attention, does not argue to win, does not need to be shared thousands of times. It whispers, and to hear it, you must be quiet long enough. Give yourself moments of doing nothing, not reading, not listening, not speaking. Just sit there with yourself. At first, the stillness will feel frightening. You will hear the noise inside your own mind, worries, doubts, regrets, memories. But if you stay patient, they will fade, revealing a clear space beneath. In that space, wisdom begins to speak. Many think wisdom is a treasure to be found, but it is really a way of living. It grows from observing instead of judging, from asking instead of concluding. It does not come from knowing more, but from understanding deeper. The wise are not those who have all the answers, but those who ask the right questions. They do not need a stage, because their light does not come from a spotlight, it shines from within. And to keep that light alive, you need the right people. No one can hold wisdom alone. It must be shared, not through debate, but through presence. Seek those who make you want to think deeper, speak less, and listen more. Those who make you feel gently humbled, not because they intimidate you, but because they remind you how much there is left to learn. Such people are rare, but when you find them, they can change the way you live. And sometimes, they are not even people. Sometimes, that wise companion is an old book you happen to reread. The sound of rain on the roof, the wind slipping through an open window, the moment you stand before the sea and suddenly feel small but peaceful. These things do not teach with words, yet they make you understand through their quiet. And that is how true wisdom is passed on, not through lessons, but through presence. The world will not stop to let you breathe, but you can choose to pause within yourself. Practice stepping out of its rush, even for a few minutes a day. Turn off your phone. Walk without headphones. Look at someone without reaching for a camera. Let your mind be empty, so what truly matters can enter. For wisdom cannot enter a room already filled with other voices. And if you fear being left behind, remember this. Slowing down is not falling behind. It is the only way to move in the right direction. In a world that runs endlessly, the one who can stop is the one moving forward. Wisdom is not about winning the race, but about seeing the game. You do not need to do anything grand to restore wisdom. Just start with the smallest acts. Protect your attention. Question what is easy. Listen to what is silent. Choose the right people, and learn to live slowly. Slow not to be lazy, but to be real. To feel real laughter, real pain, real love, the things that no short piece of content can ever hold. Maybe the world will not notice when you do this. It will stay loud. It will still pull you into its whirlwind. But inside you, something small will change. You will no longer be carried away. You will still live among the noise, but no longer belong to it. Amid millions of voices, you will begin to hear your own again, slow, clear, true. And that is the sound of wisdom returning. The journey back to wisdom is not an escape from the world, but a return to your own inner self. It does not ask you to abandon technology, retreat to the forest, or live like a monk. It only asks that you live with awareness. Every small decision, every thought, every glance can become a doorway, leading you deeper within. Wisdom does not appear in a grand moment of revelation. It sprouts quietly in the most ordinary acts of life. Begin with simplicity. The world is already too complex for us to add more confusion to our minds. Clear out the noise both around you and within you. Set limits on what you allow into your awareness, not because you are closing off, but because wisdom needs space to breathe. When the room is too crowded, even light cannot enter. So let the unnecessary things fall away, the empty conversations, the borrowed worries, the desires that do not belong to you. Each time you let go, a small stillness opens. And in that stillness, you will see what the noise has been hiding all along. Read but not to collect knowledge. Read to be transformed. Seek books that do not just inform you, but compel you to live differently. Read slowly, so every line has time to sink into you. When you read, do not only listen to the author's voice, listen to your own voice responding within. Sometimes, the silence that follows a sentence is the sign that you are truly learning. But reading is not enough. You must live. Let the ideas you absorb become experience. Wisdom is not found in words, but in action guided by awareness. Each time you choose honesty over convenience, kindness over being right, patience over hurry, you are practicing wisdom. You will see that it is not something distant or mysterious. It lives in every mindful breath, in every conscious choice among countless meaningless ones. Spend time in solitude, not loneliness. Solitude is where the soul hears itself again. In solitude, you see your true voice, separate from the roles the world has assigned you. At first, the silence will make you uneasy, like entering a room left untidy for years. But if you stay long enough, you will begin to see the old objects of yourself: fear, pride, envy, lingering anger. Do not chase them away. Watch them as you would lost children. When you can be gentle with them, wisdom enters quietly, like an old friend returning home. Observe your own life, how you speak to others, how you react when misunderstood, how you choose what to remain silent about. All reveal the depth of your awareness. Wisdom is not understanding others, but understanding yourself while among them. You may not control the world, but you can notice how the world changes you. Each time you catch yourself about to react and instead choose to pause, wisdom grows a little stronger. Most importantly, choose conversations that help you grow. Do not seek those who always agree with you, but those who make you think. True friends do not only comfort you, sometimes they unsettle you. They make you face what you would rather avoid. Yet they are the mirrors that show you what you cannot see. Wisdom does not live in perfect agreement, but in humble dialogue. And finally, learn to live slowly. Not slow out of fear, but slow out of intention. Eat to know that you are eating. Listen to truly hear. Look to truly see. Inhale and exhale as if each breath were a small prayer. Wisdom does not exist in extraordinary moments, but in the way we live ordinary ones with awareness. When you can see the sacred in the simple, you begin to understand what enlightenment truly means. To live wisely in this age is an act of quiet rebellion, because you are choosing to move against the current, to be genuine in a world that celebrates imitation, to be still when everything rushes, to understand when others only want to win. But this is the only revolution worth living for. It needs no slogans, no noise. Only a soul that observes, a heart that listens, and a hand that pauses before doing what does not matter. And if ever you feel lost, remember, wisdom has never left. It still lives in your breath, in the moment you pause and ask yourself, what truly matters? That question is the beginning of awakening. Live slowly, but live truthfully. Think less, but feel more deeply. Speak less, but when you do, let it come from a heart that has listened to itself. Because in the end, wisdom is not something you find out there. It is what you become each time you choose to live with awareness and compassion. And perhaps, in this world, that is the bravest act of all. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.